Opening day! I know, I'm the only person that gets excited about baseball opening day amongst my friends, and every time I start telling them about how my fantasy baseball team is doing, about how the Yankees are gonna dominate this year, it's just gonna crush it, listen to the sound of the bat, just make them watch videos on my phone over and over again.
Oh my God! Wow! Oh my God!
But the reason why I really enjoy baseball is because baseball a lot of times really just doesn't get its fair share of understanding. A lot of times people just look at baseball and assume that because they see a heavy pitcher or Torlo Colon pitching, they're like, oh, well, baseball must not be an athletic sport. You really think so? You really think so? If you look at the science of it, actually not even the science of it, the physics of it, Harvard physicist was actually quoted as saying that it's clearly impossible to hit a ball, but somehow these guys figured out the best hitters in baseball bat 300. That is crazy. If you batted 30%, if LeBron James shot 30%, like let's say in 3-pointers, like 30%, not 39%, I'm talking about 30% or 31%, he'll be considered a garbage 3-point shooter. That's how hard baseball is. People don't understand just how skilled baseball players have to be good at their sport. So yeah, man, you know what I'm talking about. Woo! Got over here repping my Indian Springs baseball straight out of Birmingham, Alabama. That's my high school, guys. So I even got my baseball glove from high school. Got a baseball here. So the reason why I got a baseball is to actually really explain something that's real difficult to understand about this sport. So just how fast a baseball travels from the pitcher's mound all the way to home plate, it takes 400 milliseconds. To put that in perspective, so a voluntary blink is 175 milliseconds. That's how fast a baseball is going. So 3 voluntary blinks and boom, the ball's at the plate. So when the pitcher's winding up, about 75 milliseconds, or 100 milliseconds, it's traveled about 9 feet, and that's when the batter has to that's when the hitter has to react to it and figure out around 175 milliseconds. So basically 1 blink is when the hitter has to figure out just what type of pitch it is. Is it a fastball? Is it a sinker? Is it a changeup? And by that time, usually on a fastball, 90-mile-an-hour fastball, at that 175 mark, the ball has already traveled 9 feet. That's how fast it is. And then when it gets to 225 milliseconds, this is when the hitter has to decide if they're going to swing or not. But they need to decide it at they need to decide it milliseconds before that, because the entire time that it actually takes for a bat to swing, for the brain to tell the body to swing, it's 150 milliseconds. And then usually when it gets to around 350 milliseconds, so with only 50 milliseconds for this ball to get to home plate, that's when usually only the most exceptional hitters that can make sudden changes can actually even adjust. So by that time, it's like really late. And even if you're 7 milliseconds late, that's when the ball is going to go foul. And then that's when this happens.
I watched him pitch a few weeks ago. Inadvertently damaged some pretty expensive equipment. The mid-home RoboCam is out of commission. Wham!
This stuff is hard, but man, I'm so excited that it's opening day, man. There's a lot of good baseball on. Actually, first pitch is about to happen.
With them leading out the game, I expect him to take a pretty healthy cut here if he gets a juicy looking first pitch fastball from you right here. Right into the half, and a drive to right.
Woo! Look at that, we're already starting the season. Ian Happ just hit a home run to go for it, man. I love baseball. So anyways, to continue what I was talking about, baseball is a sport that requires a lot of skill, and I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, oh, by the way, I know what you're wondering. Cyrus, how are you at a tennis facility talking about baseball? Bro, this channel is called SportsCy. Welcome to my universe. It's gonna be a lot of different sports colliding, man. What you expect? Anyways, go back to it. So, baseball is a skill is a skill-driven sport. So if you're a good pitcher and you can locate the ball, man, you're gonna be much better off than just pitchers who just throw hard, because all the way from high school to the minors, a lot of people are just separating themselves by just throwing really hard. By the time you get to the majors, you got to be able to locate that pitch, because you got some of the best professionals around being able to locate where your ball is going and just crushing it, just like that guy. First pitch, he just went out of the yards. What do you do when you got some of the best skilled hitters trying to hit at you, especially if you're trying to blow past them? Then you got to get creative. You got to start throwing nasty, nasty pitches, and that's when you start getting things like this.
He's close. It's that even. This. I mean, he's never seen a pitch like that, I guarantee you.
See, that's exciting to me, just because to be able to control that, that's a lot of skills. It's so many hours that go into them. Like, they work with pitching coaches, all the up and down the levels. You gotta be like level-headed, making sure everything is all right and tight. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself, like, how much baseball do you really watch? Like, do you watch that much baseball to where you really pay attention to these things? Well, the reason why I pay attention to it is because, alright, as some of y'all may already know, I do play a lot of fantasy sports, and one of my biggest addiction is fantasy baseball. So much so, I'm not even the best at it, but I'm in 4 fantasy baseball leagues. That's a lot of tracking. So what's that resulted in is that I know entirely too many players. But I will say fantasy baseball is so much better than the other sports, man. I can argue with you all day. By the way, in the comments in the below, please put what you feel is the better fantasy sports. But I definitely believe fantasy baseball is, and we can argue about it. If you want to argue about it toe to toe, just hit me up on Twitter, SportsCy. One full thing, put it right there. Then you can follow me on Twitter and we can talk about it all day. But look at fantasy basketball, dude. Fantasy basketball is okay. It's all you need is draft LeBron James, draft Anthony Davis, boom, championship won. Don't even have to check it. Football, yeah, football is exciting, but guess what? They only play like 2 days a week. I guess now 3 days a week because they have Thursday night football. But baseball, you got sports on every day. Fantasy baseball, you have more players. So if in football one of your players gets injured, your season could be done. So and even in football, if you have like an amazing monster like a Todd Gurley, you don't even have to worry about it. You're basically cruising into the playoffs, and then you just got to play your matchups. Pretty much that's all you got to do. But with fantasy baseball, you can have Mike Trout, you can have Giancarlo Stanton, and it doesn't matter. You still need to make sure that your pitching is on point. And so that's why sometimes what I do is I come here, I just like to dive deep into like my fantasy baseball teams, and I just start to look at rosters. And with fantasy baseball, if you have 25 players on each team with 30 teams, that's so many players to choose from. If any of y'all have ever seen the movie Moneyball, they were able to actually build a championship winning team working with players that nobody knew about. All they did is they crunched the math with sabermetrics, and they were able to actually catapult themselves to the top. Fantasy baseball, that's definitely why I think it's a great sport. No, he didn't. Yo. Yo, he hit a home run on his first at-bat. Giancarlo! Man, it's going to be a great season for Yankees fans. So that right there is actually one of my fantasy baseball players, Giancarlo Stanton, playing for my favorite team, the Yankees. So I always like to play fantasy sports just because I get to actually have funny names for my team names. So for example, Giancarlo Stanton is on my team, so my team name is Stuntin' is a Habit. So if you know the song, put it in the air.
Stuntin' is a habit. Put it in the air. Stuntin' is a habit. Put it in the air.
So that's what he's gonna do this year, as you just saw. But to go back to it, fantasy sports, really a fun way to get into baseball. So if you're wondering, like, baseball may seem boring, not exciting to you, you need to make sure that you actually watch the way that Dominican fans actually watch baseball. When I went to the World Baseball Classic, I was able to learn so much about the passion of the game. And see why the Dominican players tend to be the best players in the world is because of the passion that entire country has about that sport. But if you find it boring, I challenge you, first watch some home runs.
On Jose Altuve. Altuve hits the first pitch high and deep to left field. This ball is crushed.
Ozuna blasts one. Stanton drives it left field.
Then watch some web gem.
At the wall, at the track, jumps and...
No, he didn't.
Terrific catch. He brings it back in the ballpark. Flores back and makes another leap and takes an extra base hit away.
Center coming over. Pilar makes
left center field a little bit more, and that allowed him.
And then watch some nasty pitches.
33 against strikeout for Clayton. Oh, that's slow. And another.
And I'm telling you, you're gonna start seeing the athleticism and appreciate it. And if you don't, well, I guess it's more for me. But that does it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed this whole experience where I was talking about why I love baseball and specifically fantasy baseball. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe because it's cool on SportsCy. And I'll catch y'all next time. Thanks for checking me out.